So the first question here is a multi-support resistance line bounce type of system here with one, with one kind of key filtering rule here. So if the market is above the pivot PP line, then long trades only, right? Long signals only, and of course vice versa. So if price is below the pivot PP line, then it's going to be short signals only, right? And it just so happens that the pivot PP line is right here in the middle of the chart today. So we kind of got lucky. So again, when price is below the PP line, we're looking for short signals only. And remember, the signals are when price bounces off of a pivot line. So if price is below the PP line, then the only way to generate a signal off of S1 or S2 or S3 is price, has to go below it, right? And then bounce off of S1 from underneath it, right? So be a short bounce down, right? So if price bounces off the top of S1, those bounces upwards are ignored, right? Because that would be a long bounce. But of course, only short signals are given if price is below the PP line, right? And of course, vice versa. So when price is above the PP line, then there's only long signals when price goes above R1 and then bounces off of the top of R1 or R2 or R3, right? So, and so because of this one, key requirement here, we're not able to use the support resistance solver to minimize the number of nodes to build this bounce system. So basically, each pivot line has to have its own group of solvers to identify a bounce off of each pivot line, right? So last week we were hoping to use the support resistance solver, right, which allows you to select every pivot line and find bounces off of every pivot line. And that would work as long as you allow bounces to the long side and short side off of every pivot line, right? But that's not the case. So there's no long bounces off of S1, S2, or S3, right? Only short bounces. And so because of that one requirement, the support resistance solver wasn't going to work for us. So what was built last week basically had to be completely scrapped. 90% of it had to be scrapped and rebuilt from scratch. So we weren't able to finish it last week. So we'll get it done today, right now. So, let's see here. All right, so let's get to get started here. Let me open BloodHound. And first thing we want to do is put a file name in there. So let me hit the Save As button. And there we go. So we do actually have a file from last week, but we didn't upload it to the public because the system doesn't work. So there's not much value in it. All right, so today's the 10th. There we go. All right, so there is today's workshop date. So we got a file name in here. So we're ready to start working now. Let's pull this down a little bit. All right, so I'm going to start working on the logic tab, and let's create a new logic template there. So, all right. So another thing that's being used in this system here is the prior day indicator, right? So the prior day indicator is also being used as support resistance lines. And there needs to be a minimum distance here. So here we go. So getting to rule 2A. So we need at least 10 points of separation, between, where the closing price is to any of the prior day high, low, or close lines. So the market open is not included here. All right, so the white line is the prior close, right? So if there is a long bounce off of the top of the PP line, then so then for any given day there needs to be at least wrong line there we go. I want the arrow. So there needs to be at least 10 points if one of the prior day lines is right above the PP. We need this 10 points of clearance there. And actually, yeah, we can see we got the prior close and the prior high in between before we get to R1 above here, right? So we need to make sure that, yeah, we have at least 10 points of clearance, if there is a long signal and trading into one of the prior day lines there. And so we actually got two. We got the close and the prior day high there before we get to R1. All right, so we're going to start off with some of the simple things here, right? So the simplest requirement, basically, I wouldn't call it a trend filter, but it is a directional filter here, right? So basically, just identifying, is the market, above or below the pivot PP line there, right? So to do that, we're going to grab a comparison solver like so. Drop that in there. All right, so we're going to compare the close to the pivot PP line. All right, so input A, that's going to be the closing price of the bar. So we're going to change the type to price, and the closing price, right, is the default. So we'll just leave that alone. And then input B, that will be the pivot indicator. So let's open that up and then scroll down and find the pivot indicator. All right, there we go. There's the pivots indicator. And so we want to know, is the closing price, above or below the PP line there. So that's already selected for us. We're good to go. Click OK. And there we have it, right? So we can see here, right, the close of the bar is above the PP line, right, which is the orange line here. And we get a long output when the close is above, and when the closing price is below the PP line, then we get a short output. Right, so there we go. So there's our directional, signal filter. So, and let's see here. And so the next filter, right, is checking for this, 10 points of clearance there. And to do that, we are going to use a support resistance solver to verify that there is that 10 points of clearance, before to filter out, any kind of long or short signal. So we're going to grab a support resistance solver, plug that in there. All right, so we're basically checking to see, if we have if we're 10 points, far enough away from the prior day indicator there. So when you're checking to make sure that that price is far enough away so that you can trade into it, that's called headwind mode. So we want to use the headwind mode to check that there's enough clearance, enough distance away to trade into a resistance line. All right. And let's see here. So for the resistance lines, we want to use an indicator as our support resistance line. So we're going to set that to true. And now we can see that the indicator input section opens up here. And so now we can go and plug in the pivots indicator. I'm sorry, the prior day indicator, not the pivots. I'm looking in the wrong section. There we go. There's our prior day. All right, there's the prior day indicator. And we're going to select all. All right, but then we're going to remove the open. Right, so we're not using the prior open, just the high, low, and close for this. All right, so there we go. There's our 3 support resistance lines that we're using. So there, so we have our indicator set in. And so we're comparing the close of the bar, right, to make sure that the close of the bar is at least, 10 points away from the prior day. So actually, yeah, there we go. I'll change the title there. So we're checking to make sure that we're 10 points away from any of the prior day lines there. All right, so now we can jump down to the distance targets there, and we are looking for points. So we're going to change the measurement units to points, like so. Change the ATRs to points there, and we want 10 points, right, of clearance. There we go. So there we go. Our distance targets are 10 points. And now let's check the outputs here. All right. So if the closing price is at 10 points away, then we want an output. If it's at 10 points or less, no, we don't want an output, right? So in other words, yeah, if we're at 10 points or less, then then there's not enough distance away to trade into one of the prior day lines. So now if basically the no support resistance a breakout. So if price is above all of the prior day lines, then that's okay, right? Because obviously if the closing price is above the prior high, right, then there's no more prior day lines above that you could trade into. So if price is above the prior day high or below the prior day low, right, then we want an output because there's no lines below to trade into, or there's no lines above to trade into. So, and if price actually equals the prior day line, no, that's not acceptable either. So we're going to turn that one off. So, all right. So for more detail on all of these outputs and how they work, you'll want to go watch the training video, the documentation video on the support resistance solver. and that'll give you a lot more detail, as to how the distances work, and how all the outputs work there. Let's see. So let's check here. So 10 points of clearance. Let's see, we're on the ES. Let's see where. Yeah, so we have about 24 points of clearance here. So from there to there, that's about 24 points approximately. So we're getting a long and a short output here because there's 10 points or more of clearance from where the closing price is to the prior day close or the prior day low, right? There's plenty of clearance there. Let's see if the market gets a little close. Yeah, here we go. Perfect. So you see how we have two bars here? Actually, we have a few more bars, but right here, we have two bars where basically the close got within 10 points to the prior day close. And so the long output disappears because you're too close to take a long trade into, right? The market's too close to take a long trade into the prior day close, right? So that's what the support resistance solver in headwind mode is telling you, that, oh, you're 10 points or less, so don't take a long trade. No long trades right here because you're too close to the nearest resistance line, right? So, and same thing over here. Yeah, so over here, right, we have a couple of bars here where the closing price is within 10 points of the prior day close, right? So there you go. So we know it's working. The way we have it set up, we know it's working. So those two requirements there. And let's see, I think I'm missing one here, so I'm just checking the rules here again. Oh, right. So, okay, yeah, so we made sure that there's 10 points to the prior day, but also we need to check just the pivot indicator, right? Because you might end up with a day where the pivot indicator itself is really compressed, after a consolidation day in the markets. So you might, so even from one pivot line to the next, they could be so compressed that those pivot lines are, within 10 ticks or 10 points of each other, right? So that's the other thing. So we need to take, basically set up another support resistance solver the same way, that we just set this one up. But instead of using the prior day indicator, we're going to use the pivots indicator. All right. So what I'm going to do is take a little shortcut, and I'm going to switch over to the solvers tab. And there's, right, our list of solvers, and I can make a copy of this support resistance solver, and so now we can make sure that basically the pivot lines have at least 10 points of clearance between them, right? So, all right, so here's the indicator. So we're going to replace the prior day indicator with the pivots indicator. All right, so so we'll just select all the pivot lines, like so, and our 10 point distance requirement is already set up for us, and all the outputs are already set up for us. So there we go. That support resistance solver is all set up. All we had to do is replace the indicator, and we're all ready to go. Okay, so going back to the logic tab, we're now going to go to our solver nodes, existing nodes, and there is the new solver right there that we just made using the pivots indicator. So put that on there, and there we go. So now we have all four, all three requirements in place. So we have rule 1. So the first solver takes care of rule number 1 here, right? This comparison solver. And then these two support resistance solvers takes care of rule number 2 and 2A, right? Making sure that there's that 10 points of clearance before trading into any of the support resistance lines. All right, so now let's combine these together. So let's see here. Yeah, so these are all going to go into an AND node. There we go, AND node. Right. And now we can connect that in. So now if we kind of scan through here, so what we have is basically a trade direction permissive now. So we can basically kind of call this like our filters, right? So as we can see here, right, when the closing price is above the pivot line, right, then we have to trade long. So we can see, right, no shorts are allowed if the close is above the pivot line, and vice versa. If the close is below, then only short signals are allowed, right? No long signals are allowed. And let's see, let's scroll back here, somewhere back here. And yeah, here we go. So if the closing price gets too close to a support resistance line, then no trade is allowed, right? So if there's no output, then that's going to prevent any signal from getting through. So now, of course, we're not going to get a bounce signal way up here. Obviously a bounce signal is going to be a lot closer to the PP line, right? But you never know, on the next day, the prior close could be way down here, really close to the PP line. And so that means no long bounce signals off of the PP line going into the prior close if it's a lot closer, right? So because there's just not that clearance. So all right, so now we need to start building the bounce signal logic. Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit, put that off to the side, put that off to the side. So let me go find an actual bounce. All right, it looks like we might have a bounce right here. Yeah, that looks like it could be a bounce there. Obviously it's a matter of, how we determine the requirements of a bounce here, right? So, we do have enough separation there, right, prior to the market coming back in and bouncing off. So the key element is this distance right here. Did below that bar get close enough to be considered price coming in, touching, and bouncing off? Obviously that's very subjective. That's for you guys to determine, as traders. All right, that's the subjective part of finding bounces, right? Or rejections. Yeah, the other term that's used is price rejecting a support resistance line. So a bounce or a rejection, whatever you want to call it here. This is probably, this one here probably definitely looks like that would meet a a bounce signal requirement. So let's work right here. We'll use this spot here for our bounce. There we go. So we'll zoom in a little bit. There. All right. So what is the main components when you're identifying a bounce pattern, right? Well, you got to ask yourself, is there a bounce in here, right? Obviously not, right? Price is consolidating around R1, right? So, how do you eliminate consolidation, versus a more legitimate bounce, right? Well, that you have to have price, price has to have moved away from your support line, a certain distance away. So you have to figure out, how far away does price need to move away from my support line, for it to actually create a good bounce. And then how many bars does it need to be moved away? How many bars of separation? Does price have to go up for 1 or 2 bars and then it can come in for a bounce? And you would consider that a bounce, or do you need price to move away, for a significant number of bars, and then price can pull back to the support line to bounce off? Those are all subjective numbers that you guys have to determine on your own. So, but that is basically one of the mechanical requirements, when you find a bounce, when you identify bounces here. Here's a great classic example, right? Price moved away and then it pulled back, and did it get close enough for a bounce? That's, who knows, but that's it, right? Price has to move away and then it has to pull back and get close enough to your support line, and then reverse direction and bounce away. So, all right, so the first requirement here is having this separation there. So to make sure that price has moved far enough away before pulling in for the bounce, we can determine that using a comparison solver. So we're going to, I'm just going to build a real simple one. And so I'm just going to compare the closing price of the bar. And I think last week, we used either 5 or 6 points here. So I'll be a little conservative here and go with 6 points. So we want the close to be 6 points. And this actually is this is R1. Okay. So we're gonna build our first bounce off of the pivot R1. All right. So input A, that's going to be the closing price. So we're going to switch our input type to price. And there's the closing price right there. And the distance that we want is 6 points. So we're going to switch from ticks to points. So there we go. Let's put that on points. Put that on points. There we go. And put 6 points in there. All right, so there's our 6 points of separation that we're looking for. And now the input B, that's going to be the R1 line. So, scroll down to the pivots. All right, there's our pivots indicator. And so we're looking for long bounce signals, right, off of R1. So we're going to use R1. So R1 is going to be for a long output. And let's see. Yes, we can do this. And so we can actually do, because BloodHound evaluates, right, long signals separately from short signals, we can also do S1. So we can look for short bounces off of S1 at the same time, right? So we can use this one solver for R1 and S1 at the same time. So, all right, and so there we go. So we can see, right, price has moved, the close of the bars has moved at least 6 points away. So, right. So, if you want to be even more conservative, you could look at the low of the bar and make sure that the low price of the bar has a certain clearance, right, between your support line to price, if you even want to be more clearance, right? So whatever bar prices, you want to look at, right, obviously that's up to you on how, strict, you want your bounce requirements to be, right? So using the closing price, is, I guess I would consider it probably the most liberal way to find a bounce, or identify or define. Yeah, the most liberal way to define a bounce would be just to use the closing price. So if you want to be really conservative, then you could use the low of the bar and make sure that the low price, moves a certain distance away, before price pullback would be considered a bounce. So, okay, so now we have this separation. Now, how many bars does price need to be moved away? Is just 1 bar good enough? 2 bars or 4 bars or 5 bars? Again, that's subjective. So, usually when I demonstrate these bounce signals, I just use a 5 bar requirement. So to count and make sure that enough bars have separated from your support line, we're going to use the signal counter for this, right? Let's pull in the signal counter. And so with the signal counter, counting up to, that's how many bars, with that 6 point separation. That's the minimum requirement here. So let's just say we want a minimum of 5 bars with that 6 points of separation there, right? And with the signal counter, we can actually allow some variance, right? Because sometimes, sometimes you'll get a couple bars with that 6 points of separation, and then you might get 1 or 2 bars in between where it's not quite 6 points, and then the market moves away and you get 6 points again, right? So as price is bouncing around and whatnot, right? You may not get a perfect 5 bars in a row with that separation. So with the signal counter, I can increase the look back period and say 7 bars. So what this is doing is saying, okay, we need at least 5 bars out of 7 bars with that 6 points of separation there, right? And let's see, yeah, last thing is let's change the output to digital, like so. And actually we can see that over here, actually we didn't get that 5 bars, 5 out of 7 bars with 6 points of separation. So just for the sake of producing signals here, let's knock this down to only 5 points of separation there. And let's see if that will help us get a signal there. Okay, there we go. All right. So now, right, we have a long output telling us that, back here, we did get at least 5, we have 5 bars out of the last 7 where there's 5 points of separation there. All right. And then price pulls in, and actually it ends before the market actually pulls in there for that bounce. So let's see here. Yeah, that's not really a bounce. Let's see what else we got here. So, well, yeah, it's possible that this one could turn into a bounce. There. This could be forced into a bounce, right? By taking, so what this long output is telling us is so far it's only telling us that we have at least 5 bars with that 5 points of separation, right? So once we get that, we then need to extend it forward enough bars to allow the market to pull in and bounce off, right? So once we get that 5 bars of 5 points of separation, then obviously it takes a couple of bars for the market to pull in to the support line, and then bounce off. All right, so the next step is after your signal counter, we then need a signal extender, and I guess we'll just go with 5 bars there, right? So we've now taken our 5 bars with 5 points of separation and extended it out another 5 bars to allow the market a few bars to come in for that touch of the support line and then bounce off. So actually it doesn't look like it's gonna work out there. Of course, again, you can create as many allowances as you want. So if you wanted to force this into being a bounce, then we would have to extend the signal extender more than 5 bars. Let's see. Yeah, we would need to go out 10 bars. There we go. Right, so now we have a long output when price actually touches, touches the support line there. All right. So 10 bars would work there. That's obviously, I wouldn't consider that a bounce. That's pretty sloppy. And again, let's see, what is that distance? Yeah, that's almost 2 points of separation from the bar low to the pivot to the R1 line. 2 points. So whether that came close enough for a bounce, again, very subjective. So let's see here. Yeah, we don't really have any good, clean examples here of this. Wow. All right. Yeah, so I will, just so we can get a signal here, I'm going to leave our signal extender at 10 bars. So let's put that in there. All right, so give that a name so we know it's a 10 bar extension. There we go. All right, so this group of nodes here, this logic here, is identifying the separation part, right? Making sure that price had moved away, far enough away, and for long enough away, you know, to produce a good, clean bounce signal. So now we need to identify price coming into the support line and getting close enough, or at least touching, or getting close enough, to be considered, the price pulling back to the support line for the bounce. So to do that, we're going to need, I'm going to close this up a little bit. We're going to need some more comparison solvers to do that, right? So this comparison solver identified the separation. Now we need a comparison solver that identifies when price gets close enough to the support line to be considered a possible bounce, right? So let's grab another comparison solver here. Connect that in. And let's see here. All right, so I just simply called this, the bar touching R1. So what defines a bar touching a line? Well, the low price, right? The low of the bar is going to be below the line, and the high of the bar is going to be above the line. Right? Pretty simple. So we're going to, so for input A, that's going to be the 2 bar prices. So let's see here. So we'll use the high of the bar to generate a long signal, and we're going to use the low of the bar to generate a short signal here. And input B, right, that's going to be the R1 line. So we have to go select the pivots indicator, and we're going to use R1 there, select R1. And what we're looking for is this long and short output together at the same time, right? Any bar that touches R1 gives us a long and a short at the same time. Just like over here, see all these bars that are touching R1, we're getting a long and a short together. That's what we're looking for. So, right, so we want to filter out the bars that have a long and a short output at the same time, and we want to strip out the bars that have a long only, right? Because all these bars with a long only, they're not touching. So we want to strip those out. And so to do that, we can use the long short modifier. And with the long short modifier, we're going to use the product mode there, which is the multiplier. There. So I'll call that product, right? And so there, now all we're left with is a long and a short output on the bars that actually touch the R1 line, right? And there we go. So there's that bar touching the R1 line. So, right. But sometimes, price may not actually touch your support line. It may just get close, right? Like right here, right? Sometimes price gets close but never actually touches. So we also need to allow for this possibility as well, for this variance there. So for that, we're going to grab another comparison solver. And let's put that down there. Yeah, so once again, we're going to compare the low price of the bar or the high of the bar. So actually, this solver is going to be able to, we're going to be able to use it in two places here. That way we can minimize the number of solvers. So now the decision is, how close does price need to get to your support line to be considered, a bounce, to be considered getting close enough for that to be considered a bounce. And let's see, what do we actually have here? So less than a point. Yeah, less than a point. So I guess just to be more liberal, we'll require price to get within 1 point. All right, so as the name implies here, this solver can identify if price gets close enough to R1 and also S1, right? So for a long bounce off of R1 or for a short bounce off of S1 there, all right? So input A is going to be price once again. And so for a long signal, this time we're comparing the low of the bar to R1. And for a short, we'd be comparing the high of the bar to S1. Right? So input B, that's going to be our pivots indicator once again. And there's our pivots indicator. And so for a long, right, a long bounce off of R1 and a short bounce off of S1. There. Okay, so now we need to get our outputs correct. So we're going to use the A equals B right there. Like so. And yeah, sometimes the text doesn't update. All right, you'll see it's, oh, that's because I didn't update my differences. Sorry. Let's go set in our distances here. So we're not doing ticks, we're doing points. So we're going to change the measurement units back over to points again. And let's put 1 point in there. There. Okay, there we go. So now on the outputs, we can see it says A equals B within 1 point, right? So when the low price gets within 1 point of R1, then we're going to get a long output. And there we go. There's our long output because the low is within 1 point of R1. And so the opposite is true. So if the high gets within 1 point of S1, right? Because remember, for input B, we used S1 for the short signal calculation, right? So if the high gets within 1 point of S1, we're going to get a short output. So let's see if we actually get that. I wonder. Yeah, there we go. There. So here's S1, and so we can kind of see, right, price is clustered around S1. So we have a bunch of bars here where the high of the bar is within 1 point of S1. So there we go. There's our little confirmation. Oh, look, and actually we have a nice, look at that. Let me circle that. There. So we got, it looks like we have a nice separation, and then price pulls in, and it looks like, yeah, we might actually get a short bounce right there off of S1. Yeah. All right, we'll check that out later on. So, okay, so here's where we're working. There we go. All right, so we have the two possibilities here, you know, of price pulling in to our support line, right? So these two nodes is when the bar actually touches the support line, and the second one here is when price gets close enough to the support line, right? So there's the two possibilities. And so we need to connect those now together with an OR node. All right, because we could get either or of these possibilities there. There, let's connect that in. Right. There. All right, so we have two bars that pulled in close enough to R1 to actually, you know, generate the bounce off of that. So now, stretch this out a little bit. All right. So now we need to connect these two conditions together, right, to make, right, to get, connect both of those two requirements together, right? So remember, the top logic is the separation, right? That's our 5 bars of 5 points of separation. And then the bottom logic is price coming in and touching the support line. So now we need to combine those together with an AND node. All right, so let's take a look here. Press that. Right, so that's our separation. And then once we connect in the touch, there we go. Now we get a single output, right? A single signal there. So, and actually, let's see, that is, yeah. And, you know, again, this is subjective, but usually when I get asked about these bounce, when I get asked about bounce questions, usually the requirement is to wait for a bar to reverse into the right, in the direction of the signal, right? So since this would be a long bounce, we need an up bar to actually confirm that a bounce is actually happening, right? So the long signal is on a down bar. So we need to extend this long signal forward enough so that, price has enough bars to produce an up bar, right? To turn around and produce an up bar. And, it seems like on average, it takes about 2 to 3 bars sometimes for that to happen. Sometimes it's on the first bar. Sometimes this first bar could actually be the up bar, but as we can see, it actually took an additional bar here. So we're going to grab another signal extender. And I guess to be liberal, we'll extend 3 bars, right? Like so. Right? So there's our touch being extended out 3 bars, you know, to waiting for an up bar. So now we need a bar direction solver. There. And we need another AND node. Let's grab another AND node. Connect that in. And so once we connect our bar direction in, there we go. So now we're only getting signals, a long signal on it with an up bar. Right? So there. So once we do actually get the signal on the up bar, right, you probably don't want to see 2 signals in a row. You know, it's probably not going to matter. But if you do want to clean it up, you know, we can do that by taking the bar direction, right, the output of the bar direction. So, all right, so with this bar direction, right, up bars are producing a long output. So we can take that long output and feed it into the reset of the signal extender and turn the signal extender off. But when we do that, we don't want to turn the signal extender off on the actual up bar. We want to wait 1 bar, right? So we want to turn the signal extender off or reset it 1 bar later. So we're going to grab a lookback node. Feed the bar direction into the lookback node. And the lookback node, we're using the displacement function. So basically, think of displacement as like adding a delay. So, so that displacement, we'll name this, there we go, is adding a displacement of 1 adds a 1 bar delay. If you needed a 2 bar delay, then you just change the displacement to 2, right? And so on and so forth, right? 3 would be a 3 bar delay. So, but we just need a 1 bar delay. And then, so here, let's connect that up. Right, so we have 2 signals. And so once I connect our look back into the reset, there we go. So now we have a signal on the first up bar. And the signal extender was turned off when we got to the second up bar. Or, well, basically, when we get to the second bar, doesn't matter if it's up or down, the signal extender was reset and therefore turned off. Right. So there is our R1 bounce. There. Oh, also, yeah, we also need to take our filters here. So remember, we have our filters that's checking to see, oh, look, so we have the prior high right above this, right? So we need to make sure that there is, that we have that 10 points of clearance, you know, before generating a long signal and trading into the prior high, right? So that, remember, that's what our filters are doing over here. So we now need to take our filters and connect it into that AND node there and check that. And yeah, we have like 25 points of clearance there. Yeah, so that signal is still good to go. But there we go. All right. And then also I can, let's see here. Actually, I will move that down here, like so. All right, so we have a completed, system here for R1. So now we basically just take this logic and repeat it, but make a duplicate of it, but change the plots in the key solvers here, right? So we're going to need a couple more comparison solvers that instead of looking at R1, right, we're going to need some comparison solvers looking at the PP line and the S1 line and basically all of the other pivot lines that you might want to look at, right? So if you want this system, so if you want to identify bounces off of R2, right, then, right, you're going to have to duplicate this logic and create solvers that are looking at R2 and R3, right? So we'll do this for the pivot PP line and the pivot S1 line, and I'll stop there with just those three lines. And so if you want to extend this to also include, the R2, R3, S2, and S3, then you would just keep duplicating, this logic here and making additional comparison solvers here. So let's go through the process of adding the PP line and the S1 line here. So we go through this a couple times. All right. Let's see here. All right, so let's start working down here, I guess. Yeah, and I'll move this up a little bit. Actually, let's center in. There we go. That's the center. Yeah, so let me move that all up. There you go. So that's above now. Okay. All right. So let's switch over to the solvers tab here. There, right? So remember, the first three solvers that we created were for the filter, right? So the first three on the top here, looking at the names, we can see that those first three solvers, right, were the filters that we made here. That's these first three. So the solvers below it are what's actually, analyzing R1. R1. So, and we do have this solver that works for both R1 and S1. So we'll we'll get to that. We'll get to this. We'll come back around to this one last year. But what we want to do is make copies of these. And then we're going to convert them over to the PP line. All right. So we're going to go into the indicator and select the PP line or the PP plot there. All right. So there we go. So that's verifying that the close of the bar is 5 points away from the PP line. Now, all right. So remember that's our separation. That's our 5 points of separation away from the PP line there. So now the next solver down, right? That one we called it the bar touching R1. So now we want to know when the bar touches the PP line. just adjust the names there. Okay, so there, we adjusted the name. So now let's go into the pivots indicator and select the PP line there. All right, there we got that one done. And the last solver here, it was set up to work with the R1 and S1, but now we're going to switch it over to just the PP line there. Right, so that's either the low or the high coming within 1 point of the PP line for the possible bounce. So open up the indicator and select the PP plot like so. And there we have it. All right. Yep. I think we got them all. I think we have all the comparison solvers that we need for the PP line now set up for us. So let's go back to the logic board and let me drop those nodes on the board. So we're going into the existing nodes. And there they are. There's, right, PP, PP, PP. So it's those three solvers there. So let's drop them on the board. Like so. All right. So remember, having a good naming convention is important so you know what solver is doing what purpose for you. Right? So this comparison solver here, right, it's checking that the closing price has 5 points of separation from the pivot PP line. So I know that's identifying, you know, that separation there. And let's, you know what, we need to actually find a bounce off of the PP line. So let me see if I can find that somewhere on here. Let's see, does that work? No. Oh, let's see. Well, actually, yeah, maybe we do have a bounce in here somewhere. So yeah, we'll find out here in just a moment. Okay. So, right, so making a copy of the logic, you know, above here. So remember, we have a signal counter, right? That's looking for 5 out of 7 bars. So let's grab another signal counter. Connect that in there. And let's move our result node over. Let's connect that in there. So our signal counter, right, we're looking for 5 out of 7. And remember the output, we set that to digital, so most people are going to want to use the digital output. And so when we look at the chart, we can go, okay, yeah, there we go. Right, price, the closing price moved far enough away, at least 5 points of separation for at least 5 bars. So there we go. So we have our separation in here. Right, so that's working. And so now we need our 10 bar signal extender there. Let's grab another signal extender and connect that onto the end like so. And so adjust the extend signal 4, adjust that to 10, and here we put in the name. All right, so there we go. So we have our separation being extended out to looks like we didn't quite get there for that actual touch, but maybe this bar got close enough to be considered a touch. We'll find out here in just a moment. And so here, right, yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to get a signal there or not. And we're not going to get a signal there, yeah. So, all right, we'll watch these two areas here. Okay, so that's our separation logic built. So now let's work on the touch logic, right? Right, we're duplicating this up above here. So remember, we have a node, right? That's our bar touching solver going into a long short modifier, right? That was a long short modifier using the product mode, right? So let's grab a long short modifier, connect that in, and change the mode to product, right? There. And so now we need an OR node, right? So we have both of those connected into an OR node. So let's grab an OR node, drop that down here, like so. And so let's take a look at our touch logic here. So this is near the PP line. There we go. And yeah, there we go. So we got two bars here, right, that basically got close enough to the PP line, and obviously we have a bunch of bars there. So yeah. All right. So now, looking at what we did above, we have, right, we have both of these identifiers going into an AND node. So let's add a AND node, connect that in, and connect that in, and let's take a look. And, so, yeah, we didn't actually get a touch there. So, and let's take a look. Yeah, so there's our separation detection, right? I'm looking at the signal extender here. And now let's look at the other logic. And yeah, so, right, they didn't quite line up. So price didn't get to the PP line in time for a bounce. So again, we could make an exception for that. We could take the signal extender and adjust it for 11 bars and create that allowance. So of course you just got to keep in mind, when you make all these allowances, you're messing with the definitions of the bounce pattern. So you as you allow for all of these extra allowances, you're going to end up with sloppier and sloppier signals. So just be kind of mindful of that. So, all right. So anyways, so I increased that to 11, and so there we go. There. So there is our touch signal. So we did get one there, and we have a bunch over here. There. All right. So moving on. So we actually have our touch signal. And so looking at what we did above here, right? So this AND node actually is the, what should we call this? I guess, so I guess we could call this the raw bounce, right? And then that goes into a signal extender, so we can the signal extender and then wait for the bar direction to be in the right direction. So our signal extender was a 3-bar extension. So let's go down here, right? Grab another signal extender there. All right, set our extend signals 4, set that to 3, and let's name this here. So it's a 3-bar extension. All right, and now we need our bar direction, also another AND node. So let's grab another AND node. There we go. Connect that in like so. And then we also need this bar direction. All right, so we can go to our existing nodes. So if you already have a bar direction, you don't need to create another new one. We can use the existing one that we already have. So that way it minimizes the amount of work being done, right? So we're going to use the existing bar direction that we already have. There we go. All right. So you got to keep in mind this bar direction and this bar direction, even though we see it twice, it's the same node. It's the same node, but we're looking at it, but we can see it twice. So for example, if I change the name here, right, shorten it to just bar dir, the other one down here, look, the other one changed as well, right? The name on this one changed as well because it's the same node. We just visually can see it twice. So, right? So the alternative is I would have to create a leader and bring it all the way down like that, right? That's the alternative, is I could just take a bunch of leaders and stretch them out like that. Or I could make a cleaner look by just dropping this node on here twice. So, right. And if we go to our solvers list, right, there's only one bar direction solver here. There isn't 2 of them. There's just one on there. All right. So we have our bar direction, and now we need that look back, right, to reset the signal extender. So let's grab another look back node, bring it down there. Let's zoom in a little bit. All right, so now I got that look back node set up for a 1-bar displacement to turn off the signal extender. And so this AND node is the PP line bounce. There. All right. So there we have it. There is a nice clean bounce on the down bar. Great. Get rid of that. Now going over here, look over here. So we have a bit, kind of a bit of a messy signal there. So, right. So we get the bar touch, yeah, and then we get a down bar like so. So we need to get rid of the other signals here, you know, or maybe not. Maybe you might want to keep those other signals, but you know, but if you did want to kind of clean this up, let's see here. We need to figure out what is allowing these other two short signals, you know, after the first one there. And my guess is this back here. So remember, this is our 5 points of separation logic, and so remember we adjusted the signal extender to extend out 11 bars, right? So that is extending all the way through, you know, this price pullback, and you know, and then obviously price moves more than 5 points away, so we have our separation again, and so the short output continues as long as we have that 5 points of separation. Yeah, and then price pulls back in, and we still get a short because we're extending it for 11 bars for so long there. So we need to turn off the signal extender. Yeah, we need to turn off the signal extender. So I think, yeah, so what we can do is when, let's see here, right? So when price gets close enough, right, to our support line, right, that, right, that, we can actually use that to turn off the signal extender there. Actually, let's connect that up. There we go. And, well, yeah, over here, right, the signal extender barely got to the bar that touches, right? So it ends there. So over here, yeah, so over here, we need to turn the signal extender off. Yeah, off there. And so if you remember here, right, at the very end of our logic here, right, we're waiting for the bar direction, right? We're waiting for a bar in the correct direction. And then, right, and then we delay the signal from the bar direction, we delay it, and then feed it into the signal extender to turn it off. So we can do the same thing here, right? We can take the, you know, basically the touch signals and feed it into the reset there. So let's grab a look back, connect that in, and connect that into the reset. And so we're doing a 1 bar displacement or a 1 bar delay. And there, so that's our reset signal, our first one there. Interesting. So the signal extender still continues on for a couple more bars. Let's see, why is that? Oh, interesting. Okay. So we have this down bar actually has 5 points of separation, right? So our comparison solver feeds another signal back into the signal extender and turns the signal extender back on. Interesting. Well, yeah, it is what it is. Oh, okay, actually, let's do two things. We can also reset the signal counter as well. So let's connect that in. And so let's reset the signal counter. Bingo. Yeah, let's see if that works. All right. Let's connect that up. And there we go. All right, that did clean everything up. So there we go. There's our bar touch and our down bar in the right direction. So, yeah. So we should do the same thing, right? So we should reset. So we should take this, duplicate this functionality here up above. Right, so up here we should drop in a look back node. Here we go. So we'll connect that in, connect the OR node into the look back node, and then connect the look back into the resets here and reset the signal counter and the signal extender up above here. Right. So remember, whatever kind of modifications you make to one set of logic, you're going to want to reduplicate that to the other sets so that they're all functioning the same, right? So so this kind of behavior that happened here could easily happen with all the other pivot lines as well, right? So so when we added this look back to reset our function nodes, because of this market behavior, well, I mean, the same thing could happen to the R1 line. So you'd want to add that same resetting, to this logic up here above as well. So, and last thing here is remember to connect in our filters. There we go. Connect our filters in there. And here, just for the sake of cleaning up the leaders, there we go. There. All right. So one more pivot line to go, the S1. So let's go back to our solvers tab. And so we need a copy of this solver, right, which is finding our 5-point separation. We need the bar touching solver. There's that. And if you remember, we were going to use this solver that we created a while ago. We're going to use this twice because it works for R1 and S1. So and we'll get into that here in a little bit. So let's take our new solvers here and repurpose them for the S1 line. So we just need to go into our pivots indicator and select the S1 line or plot. All right, there's that. And adjust the name there. Go into the indicator and select S1 there. All right, so there's the two solvers that we need, right? So one's the separation, right? The 5 points of separation from the S1, and the other one is the bar touching S1. So let's go back to our logic board and go to our existing nodes and drop that on. So there's that new S1 solver we just made. Drop that over there. And let's grab our second one. There we go. Drop that down there. And then also let's drop this previous one, right, that we made a while ago that works for R1 and S1. So we'll drop that in down there. There. Right, so remember, let's go back here. So it's this solver right here that works for R1 and S1. Okay, let's pull this in. So we need a signal counter and a signal extender. So let's drop both of those on there. Signal extender. All right, start connecting things up. Connect that in. So our signal extender. So we're counting 5 bars out of 7, and we want digital output. And let's see, our signal extender, you know what, let's go back and adjust this one to 11 bars as well. There we go. Remember, you want to keep everything in sync so that the functionality is the same for every pivot line. There. There. All right, so we have the signal counter and the signal extender set up. So let's take a look at the chart and see what we have here. Let's see, we're getting a long output. Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's go back and okay. So let's, you know what? We actually don't need a separate solver here. So I'm going to get rid of that. Go back to my solvers list. And let's see. Well, before I delete it, let me just double check first. So let's go back to our logic board here. So let's take a look at this comparison solver. All right. So we're comparing the closing price to the pivot R1. Oh, and S1. So I did set this up correctly. Yeah. So this one solver is looking for 5 points of separation, 5 points of separation above R1 or below S1. So, and I kind of messed myself up because I didn't put S1 in the name. So again, this helps illustrate naming your solvers correctly. Provides a lot of benefit there. So yeah, so this solver already has a dual purpose here. So I can use that down here. Let me move this back down, connect that up. And so I'm going to go to my existing nodes, and there we go. There's the close, the close 5 points away from R1 or S1. So I'm going to drop that on the board. There it is. Connect that in. And now let's go back to the board. Okay, now the long output's gone. Okay, good. All right, so there. Right, so if price is above the R1, right, 5 points above, right, we're going to get a long output. But also, there we go. There. All right, yeah, I put that ellipse there, all right, to save it for later. So it looks like, yeah, it looks like we're going to get a bounce there. So when price, right, moves away and creates that 5 points of separation, right, we're going to get this long output. So again, let's take a look at what we are looking at, right? So remember, this is our logic here for the 5 points of separation, right? So once price comes down here for at least 5 bars, then we're going to get that, right? We're going to get that long output saying, okay, we have the 5 points of separation for at least 5 bars. Okay, so that's working correctly. So, and, in case anybody's was wondering, there we go. If I connect this, right, this logic up here is doing the same thing. All right, it is doing the same thing. However, this only works for R1. So we actually need a separate set of logic for S1 because the touch logic. So remember, the touch logic only works for R1. But also, if you remember, the OR node is going into our look back and resetting our signal counter and signal extender. Right? So we can't actually use this logic twice because our resets are different, right? So since this logic up here is for R1, and so our touch is for R1, and that touch is resetting the function nodes. All right, so we have a different reset. So the logic down here for S1, right, we're going to be resetting the function nodes using the S1 touch, right? So we have different resets. So we couldn't use the same exact nodes here since we have different resets. So So let's go back down here. So, all right, so we have our separation done. So let's build the touch logic here. Let's finish building this touch logic. Let's probably drop that down a little bit. So, looking at what we did above here, right? So that's our touch logic there. So we needed this long short modifier. So let's grab a long short modifier. Connect that in. Connect that up. And remember, the mode is set to product. There. Yeah, so there we go. So, right, so when bars are actually touching S1, there's our long and short output. And then we have the other solver, right, which identifies when price is close enough. Right, so there we go. So there, the high of the bar got close enough to S1. So, all right, and that goes into an OR node. So remember, both of these go into an OR node, like so. There. And so both of those go into an AND node, like we did up above. So let's grab an AND node. There, connect that in, and connect that in. Let's take a look, and yeah, so there we go. There's our touch signal. So we got our separation and then our touch. And also let's go add our reset in here. So we need that look back node. Connect that in. Connect that into the resets. There we go. Right. There's our touch signal, right? Resetting those two function nodes. Let's name this. There we go. All right, so that's our look back node, providing a 1 bar delay. Right, so resetting our function nodes 1 bar later. All right, so there's our touch signal. Let's see, looks like we don't get any more touches of S1. So we need to put in that last part there because the signal is on an up bar. So we want the signal on a down bar. So we now need to recreate, right, this logic afterwards. So let's grab another signal extender, connect that in, and this was a 3 bar extension. Like so. All right, we need another AND node. There's our AND node. Connect that in. And so now we need to hook in this bar direction. So let's, actually, you know what? I'll just connect that in like that. Call it good. Instead of actually dropping in another one. And then I can do the same here. I can take this signal, or this look back, connect it into the reset of the signal extender. There we go. So I'll just share this bar direction and our look back between the two there. All right, so now that I've done that, there we go. There's our signal on the down bar now. All right. And remember, if we didn't reset, let me disconnect that, right? So if we don't reset our signal extender, right, we get 2 short signals on both of the down bars, right? So that's, again, that's why we're resetting the signal extender so that after the first short signal, we turn it off so we don't get this second signal there. So that's why that's why we're using the reset there. Okay. All right, and that completes our logic for S1. Okay, so we'll name that. Oops. There, S1 bounce. Oh, and also we need our filters. So let's connect this all the way down into there. There we go. There. All right. So we have a system built to identify bounces off of R1, right? And again, I named the AND node. If we zoom in here, right? Remember, I put a name on the AND node there. So there's the R1 bounce. And then in the middle, we have the PP line bounce, right? So if we zoom out, the logic in the middle is for the PP bounce. There. And then the bottom one is for S1, right? The bounce off of S1 there. So now, right, so we have 3 separate AND nodes, right? So how do we combine all of those bounce signals together into one? Well, that's where we grab an OR node. So we'll combine them all together with the OR node. There. All right. Yeah. So let's take a look at the chart. Let's see what we have. All right, let's go back to the beginning of the chart and take a look here. Right, yeah, there we go. So there's a couple of bounces short off of the pivot PP line. And there's a couple of bounces long, right, above the pivot PP line. And our prior day close is definitely far enough away from the PP line, you know, for signals. So we're good there. Let's see. Okay. So here, I think this is yesterday, Wednesday. And so there's a couple of bounce signals off of R1. And actually, let's take a look at this. Yeah, so that's actually a breakthrough. Whether you call that a bounce or not is obviously subjective. It's not really a nice clean bounce for sure, but we do have we have a signal there, right? So if we wanted to clean that up, let's figure out, why do we have a signal after price had broken through here? So that's going to be up here. Let's see. So coming out of that AND node. All right. So there's our touch. And then our signal extender. Oh, interesting. All right, so it's not actually coming out of this AND node. Which one is it coming out of? Oh, okay. So it's coming out of the logic from the S1. Let's... Yeah, so, all right, I'm going to have to expand upon the resets here of the function nodes. So remember, previously I said, this logic and this logic is essentially they are the same, right? Because this comparison solver, right? It's named close 5 points from the pivot R1 S1, right? It's the same as this solver down here. The only difference is the touch logic that's resetting those function nodes. So, all right, I'm going to try a little experiment here, see if this works. So what I need to do, right, so what's happening is, right, I'm looking at the 5 points of separation logic down here, for S1. And, and when price is 5 points above R1, yeah, we're getting a long output, the same as what we're doing up here. So the simple solution is I can take the resets from S1 and I can take the resets from, actually, I'm sorry. I would take the resets from R1 and feed them down into the reset for S1 and vice versa. Take the resets for S1 and then bring them up and feed them into, feed them in up here to reset our function nodes. Right? That way we don't get, basically I need to use both the R1 resets and the S1 resets and use them both to reset our function nodes. Right? So if I use the R1 resets, bring them down here, then right, that would get rid of, oops, sorry, yeah, that'll get rid of the long signal here that's coming from down here. That would be the simple answer. And let's see. Yeah, let's actually build that first. Let's do that first. All right, so I'm going to grab an OR node. Let's bring it down here. So this OR node. Let's pull this out of the way. Pull that out of the way. There. So let's connect that in. All right. So I'm going to connect, right, the OR node up here, or touch. Connect that into the OR node down here, and then connect this OR node into here as well. So there we go. So we have our touches of S1 and the touch signals for R1 both going into this OR node. And so both the R1 touch and the S1 touch is now going in and resetting both of the function nodes here. right? So that is the actual solution. And there we go. So that worked, right? We got rid of that rogue long signal there. All right, that was coming from the S1 logic there. Right, so that's the way to do it. However, I think, yeah, you know what? Just for the sake of clarity, I'm going to keep it this way. So I was thinking of, bringing the S1 touch logic. I was thinking about bringing it up here and basically kind of combining, this logic with this logic and kind of reducing the number of nodes. But I think that's going to end up being far more complicated to understand, what's going on after this workshop is over with. So I think for the sake of understanding what's going on in the future, right, when you revisit this in the future, I think it's going to be better, to keep this logic separated. Yeah, I think that's going to be a lot easier to understand what's going on. So what I'll do is, let's see here. I need another OR node up here. There, so I need an OR node up here. Connect that in. Yeah, I have to move that back a little bit. Here, connect that up there. There. All right. So there we go. So now I have the same resets going on here, right? So these two, the signal counter and the signal extender, right, they are being reset using the touch logic for R1, and this is the touch logic for S1, right? So there. Okay, so now let's continue on reviewing all of our signals here. There we go. All right, so we cleaned up that long signal there. So there we go. There's a couple of bounce longs. That looks good. And let's keep on going here. Let's see. Yeah. All right. I think that looks good. Yeah. There we go. There's a short bounce off of the PP line. Yeah, it doesn't look like we have any long bounces there. Here, yeah, it looks like we didn't get enough separation. Well, actually, we just didn't get a bounce. Okay, so no bounce there. No. Let's see. Yeah, my guess, I don't think price got close enough there for that to be considered a bounce. So, and yeah, there we go. Price comes up, bounces off for 1 bar. Yeah, and then continues on through. Good. Yeah, we didn't get any down bars close enough for there to be a short bounce there. So, all right. And let's see. This is S2, and we didn't actually build any bounces off of S2. So, all right, there we go. So there's our bounce off of S1 that we looked at earlier. And, oh, what do we got here? Oh, yeah, so look at that. What is that separation? It's only 5 points. Yeah, so we have the prior day close 5 points away from the PP line. So all of these bounce signals here were negated because, right, the prior close line, which is white, right, the dashed white line is the prior close, and it's only 5 points away from the PP line. So there, that's proof that our filters are working. So no signals, if the prior day indicator is too close. So there we go. Yeah, all right, there we go. There's a 1 bar bounce off of the S1. Good to go there. And yeah, price did not get close enough. Yeah, my guess is we didn't get a clean enough separation in here, or price just didn't quite get close enough when it bounced off. We can actually verify that. So if we open up BloodHound, bring our result note in. So let's connect up the separation. Right, so remember, this is our separation logic here. And yeah, so we did get separation. Oh, yeah, so I was right. So basically, yeah, we didn't get a clean enough separation, so price kind of came in too close for too long, danced around, then it separated again, but we didn't get enough bars of separation there. So our separation ended, actually it probably ended back here, and yeah, so it's our, if we zoom in here, yeah, so remember we created that allowance of 11 bars. So basically that's taken the separation, right? So we got the separation from here being extended out 11 bars. Right? So again, that just kind of proves that when you create these kind of extreme allowances, that in other areas it kind of makes things look really kind of messy, and you wonder what's going on. Right? So that's what happened there, is we didn't get a clean separation before price pulled in. And let's actually check. Yeah, so there we go. So price did actually pull in close enough to be considered the touch, but we just didn't have a clean separation there. So again, messing around or adjusting, the separation logic, maybe you can figure out some way, to get this to work out there. But again, that's all, in the details of how you want to define your separation before price coming back in. All right, let's connect that back up. There we go. All right, that definitely is a case where price didn't get close enough. There we go. There's a bounce, a touch and a bounce. All right. Yeah, we saw this last week. So remember, when your indicator, switches prices, from one day to the next, you're going to get kind of what look like irrational signals there, right? And that's because on the prior day, so here, right, we have that separation from S1. So we have that separation, and then we go into the next day, and then it looks like, it kind of tricks the system into thinking, we got the bounce off of S1. So, but looking here, there we go. So we got a couple of bounce signals. All right, nice clean bounce signal there. And there we go. So some bounces above the PP line. Right. So far everything's looking good. There we go. There's some bounce signals off of R1. And let's see. Yep, some bounce signals off of the PP line. And let's see, the prior close is about 18 points away. 18 or 17 points away. Yeah. So this bounce to the short side has plenty of room to go. All right. There we go. Let's see. So this one, if we look at this right here, we got this long move, a touch, and then we have a down bar. But if you look at where it closed, it closed within 7 points of the prior day close line. So that's 7 points, about 7 points away. So that was too close to generate a short bounce because the prior day close is within 10 points. So there you go. Another confirmation that 10-point requirement is working. Oh, right. This is what we ran into last week, right? We were getting long bounces above S1 when there only should be short bounces. So all right, that's cleaned up. There we go, short bounce below PP line. And there we go, a bunch of bounce signals, above and below the PP line. Great. All right, so with that, I think we're good to go.